We're just so delighted to see you all, and hello to everyone on the live stream joining from around Australia and perhaps the world.
Yes.
My name is Kirsty Howie. I'm Executive Director of the Environment Centre of the Northern Territory, and I'm now going to pass over to Elder Tibby Kwol to give a welcome to country.
Well, welcome everybody to our country. I'm a Jabiluka clan for my people. In this time of the generation, I'm getting to be an elder because of all families are growing up. In the time of the beginning of Jabiluka Blockade, I was a member of the Environment Centre, and my job was to escort Bob Brown, Minister, to the Jabiluka Blockade. And yeah, that was 25 years ago. My memory of my personal fight for land rights, although Jabiluka was successful 25 years ago, I was pretty excited about what was happening, of all the development that was taking place with the Environment Centre and people coming from all around Australia. And it was the beginning of my land rights too, because I met students from down south, and I was telling them about my beginnings, and they said, yeah, we're lawyers, I'll come and help you. What? Yeah, the students, yes. You know, they came to the beginning of my native title claims 25 years ago, and that's where since then I've always been alone doing land rights too, so, and I have families out in the wider country, family at Mount Boylan, so yeah, and was interested in land rights forever now.
Thank you so much, Tibby, for those words and that warm welcome. And you know, Tibby is an absolute hero in the fights and the battles that he's had through his lifetime and ongoing to protect Larrakia country. So thank you so much, Tibby, for coming along this evening. I would also like to acknowledge that we're on unceded and stolen Larrakia land, and acknowledge Larrakia care and custodianship of these lands and waters over many millennia. And I'd also like to acknowledge all the First Nations people who are in this room tonight, and in particular the Mirarr people, many of whom have travelled quite a long way to be here at this momentous event. Thank you so much for coming here and sharing this with us all. And also, there are a lot of important people here. You're all very important. But I do want to acknowledge that we've got the Northern Land Council's CEO here tonight, Jo Martin-Jard, and also the Executive Policy Manager of the Northern Land Council, Deb Katona. So thank you so much for being here this evening and for your support of this event and of Mirarr people's fight for their country over many, many decades. We're overjoyed to be hosting this special sellout event with the Australian Conservation Foundation and Gundjeihmi Aboriginal Corporation, commemorating the defining environmental campaign of a generation. I know many of you here tonight were intimately involved in the campaign to stop Jabiluka and the blockade, and that these events have shaped you as people, as they indeed shaped this country's history and future. And before I introduce our speakers tonight and give an outline of what will happen, I'd like to say a few words about the significance of the Jabiluka Blockade and the broader campaign and furious work behind the scenes, because it wasn't just the blockade that won the campaign to eventually stop Jabiluka in its tracks. Since the 1970s, Mirarr country has been the locus of nation-defining events that are etched into our collective identity, whether we know it or not. In particular, Mirarr country saw the forced convergence of three irreconcilable agendas in the one location, to quote recently departed anti-racism scholar and hero Colin Tatz. In the height of the Cold War in the 1970s, the anti-nuclear movement and the environmental movement we recognise today was emerging as a force to be reckoned with. Recently discovered uranium deposits at Ranger, Nabarlek, Kungara and Jabiluka would not be mined for our allies' nuclear weaponry arsenals, as had occurred on Kunarakan country at Rum Jungle 2 decades before, but due to the economic promise of a global nuclear power industry. This would salvage Australia's economy from the doldrums and re-establish it as a major resource nation on the international stage. At the same time, another nation-building vision was brewing. The idea of Australia's first ever national park, Kakadu, conserving and showcasing the unique natural and cultural values of the region, was also being pursued. The third confounding factor was Prime Minister Whitlam's proposed recognition of Indigenous land rights, promising to legislate for land rights across the territory. The Alligator Rivers region, where these uranium deposits were located, and where Kakadu National Park was proposed, was one of the areas foreshadowed for land rights. And it's hard to conceive of, but all three of these things happened at the same time and in the same place. And in 1978, Ranger uranium mine was forced through by the Australian government without consent from Mirarr traditional owners. The veto, which they otherwise would have had, was carved out for the Ranger project from the Land Rights Act, and the mine would be encircled by the new Kakadu National Park. Mirarr people, I acknowledge, have been dealing with the repercussions of these decisions ever since, all the while maintaining their opposition to uranium mining on their country, and I want to acknowledge their fortitude and resilience over many decades to protect their country. Their efforts reached a crescendo in the 1990s, as you're all aware, when Prime Minister John Howard cast aside Labor's three mines policy and began to aggressively pursue Jabiluka. What happened next is history, and you will learn some of this history tonight from those who were there on the front lines and behind the scenes. But today it's hard to believe, as someone who's running an environmental organisation, that over 5,000 people from all walks of life and from all over the world came to stand with Mirarr people, led by senior traditional owner Yvonne Margarula, to take part in a non-violent direct action blockade that changed the nation forever. Today, more than ever, we should cherish this story and we should learn from it. And I won't go into too much detail about this tonight, but we are facing now in the Northern Territory renewed pushes for northern development, for the Northern Territory to become a sacrifice zone as our ecosystems and climate are collapsing, opening up new gas projects, industries like cotton, and pursuing renewed interest in mining. So we hope those who are here will be inspired and ready to take action again on new battles that threaten First Nations country across the Territory by the end of tonight. We're delighted to have a number of speakers and a short film screening, and those speakers are Kirstens Blair, former coordinator of the Environment Centre and now at Gundjeihmi Aboriginal Corporation, Corbin, Mirarr traditional owner, Justin O'Brien, the CEO of Gundjeihmi Aboriginal Corporation, and Dave Sweeney, hero of the environmental movement and ACF's anti-nuclear campaigner, as well as founder of the international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons, which won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2017. But first, I'll invite Kirsten up to speak.
Good evening, everyone. This is just so fantastic. Oh my goodness, look at all these faces. Now, before I start speaking, I just want to welcome our live streamers. Hopefully you're all on now. I've just been furiously responding to people telling me that the link wasn't working, but it is now working. So hopefully everyone's jumping on right now. And it's fantastic that so many people can join us who couldn't be in Darwin tonight, because certainly this is a room full of all-stars, but this country is full of all-stars when it comes to the story of Jabiluka. And it's one of those, I mean, my kids, whenever we're in a, interstate or somewhere, we say, oh, we know someone who lives here, let's go and talk to them. They now just say, let's have a guess, you know them from Jabiluka. So the Jabiluka family connects us all over the country, and we're so lucky because it really was an extraordinary part of history, as Kirsty has mentioned, and this town got a bit of a surprise. And I know a lot of you had been living here for a long time before all those do-gooders from down south turned up and went out to Jabiru and made the pool muddy. But for a lot of us, there are a lot of people who came to support Mirarr and stuck around. And it's just, you know, I think that's enriched this town as well as the territory. And I'll just please indulge me momentarily. My personal story has been intertwined with Kakadu since I was 14, when we came on our family trip around Australia, and I went to Kakadu, and I decided then that I really wanted to spend my life being in some way connected to that country, and I didn't realise that it would be in support of the Mirarr and the strong stance that they've taken over so many years to protect country and culture. And I'm just immensely grateful to you for welcoming me into your world and for allowing me to offer some support for the fight that you've stood up for so long. And we're just, yeah, I mean, as you are well aware, the Mirarr are superstars around the world, and certainly within the Australian environmental movement, Mirarr are just admired and seen for the example that you've set in terms of maintaining resistance and knowing that you can keep saying no. And the Mirarr brought one of the largest mining companies in the world to the table to reach an agreement that was beyond the legal structures, the existing legal structures, and that is something which has not been replicated yet. So I think, I'm just so happy that there are so many Mirarr in the room tonight with us. Yeah, so thanks for coming out. Thank you for inviting us onto your country to stand with you. Say no to Jabiluka. We have just been digging around in the archives in Jabiru this week and found just a really small sample of those postcards, and I'm sure that people in this room are some of the people who sent the thousands of those postcards. So back in 1996 and 97, those postcards were distributed through cafes and film cinemas and all over. Anywhere that you saw those old avant-garde stands, there would be that, what is now a really famous image. But that was sort of the start, really, of the hand symbol going out into the world. And that's a tiny sample, actually, of the cards that there are in Jabiru. People were just invited to send a message of support to Yvonne Margarula and the Mirarr to say, we've heard your story and we stand with you. And that was how Mirarr started to get a sense that there are people beyond Kakadu and beyond Darwin who had heard about this fight, and they also thought that that was something that really shouldn't happen. And so that's how the movement started to build. So that was a pretty fantastic first step, and I'm sure others will speak about the hand symbol, but it's something that is completely iconic. There's a lot of them around the room tonight, which is fantastic to see, and everyone knows what it means when they see it. So from there, it's actually great that this image is here, because from the postcard, the next place that amazing image was seen, of course, was on the escarpment within the Jabiluka lease area on the Oampelli Road. Not a subtle place, a place where a lot of tourists drive. At that time, it was 250,000 people a year driving down that road. So from that hand symbol being something that a few people had seen, it then became this postcard which thousands of people not only saw, but wrote on the back of and sent up to Mirarr. It was then on this huge escarpment in Australia's largest national park with very high visitation rate, and people were driving through and they'd look up there and they saw that sign, and you could read it from the road, and there are some of the people who climbed up that escarpment are in the room. They know how heavy it was. And this was before you could buy those lightweight, digitally printed banners like these ones. That was canvas. And you'll see, and we also needed it to last. You'll see in Fight for Country later, there's some fantastic footage. And you'll see actually how much effort it was for people to get that. Because a lot of people have seen this iconic image. The thing you might not be able to see, but up the top there are tiny people, human-sized people, but they're tiny in that image. That gives you a bit of a sense of just how big that was, but probably most of you drove along the Onpelli Road and saw that when it was in place, and that was 1997. That was hung on World Environment Day in 1997, and that, again, was another part of getting people familiar with that word, Jabiluka. And a lot of people, speaking of blockaders, here's another one, and a lot of people didn't know how to say that word to start with. How do you say it? And it just became more and more familiar. The hand symbol started to become more familiar. And then, so the campaign was starting to build. Some people had heard, and several Mirror and other Gundjeihmi staff went on speaking tours around the country. So interrooms similar to this in different towns and some of the capital cities. And they started to tell that story, and they had a little film to show, and they told the story, they explained the fight, and they invited people to stand with them. And so that again just started to build the campaign. And so by that stage, quite a few people had heard the story. But it certainly wasn't a household word yet. And then later in 1997, there was a classic, well, it used to be a classic, student conference, the Students and Sustainability, which was a place where I'm sure a lot of you attended a Students and Sustainability conference, or more than one. And it was a place where there were a lot of opportunities to just learn about lots of things about the world that you don't find out through mainstream media and generally the courses that you're being exposed to in your university lecture halls, but the information's around. And so a lot of people were attending that conference. The Mirror came to that conference, they told the story and invited a busload of students to spend time on country to learn a bit more about this story. And so that was about 40 or 50 students from around the country, drove in a bus from Townsville to Jabiru, arrived in Jabiru got a surprise, and people went out to the ranger mine, heard about the ranger mine, and we walked up through the lease with Carol, and Yvonne took people through and showed everyone some important places, and people learned about the story, and they got inspired and went home and started what was the Jabiluka Action Network. So the Jabiluka Action groups in all, like most of the capital cities at that time, and several regional towns. And so this network was really starting to build. And then towards the end of 1997, the processes for the establishment, as Kirsty was referring to, the establishment of Jabiluka, the attempts to secure all of the required approvals were moving up. And the sense was actually we might have to create a physical blockade. And so everybody took a deep breath and the call went out. And Yvonne invited anyone who wanted to come and stand on Mirror country to support the Mirror in their fight to protect country and stop Jabiluka mine. And an extraordinary number of people said, yeah, I'd like to do that. And I don't think Peter Kirstens arrived. I was planning to tell a story about him. But there were a few of us setting up the camp. I'm going to tell it anyway. And he turned up with a slasher, and sort of, it was this time of year. So if anyone's been out to Kakadu at the moment, the spear grass is tall, it's steamy as steamy, the ground's still a bit sludgy. The site where the camp was part of the old cattle yards. And so there was some infrastructure, which was, there was a bore that had been sunk, very handy, and there was a tank, which hadn't really been engaged with for about 30 years. So it wasn't, didn't have holes in it, but it did have a lot of leaves and rust in it. And so a couple of us spent about 3 days in amongst all that mud, just slushing it out. And then eventually we got the bore going, but we needed to put some pipes in place. And so some holes were dug, or some trenches were dug, and we were filling the holes back in. That was fine. But, you know, we were all sort of weedy city kids. And we had star pickets we needed to put in. And so we're all kind of standing there with a hammer. And Peter Christopherson, who is, speaking of legends, well, the entire Christopherson family are absolute legends, and we're really acknowledging and really sad that 2 of the family can't be with us tonight because they've passed on, and they're very much missed, and they have an extraordinary legacy. But what they've contributed not only to Mirarr country and Kakadu, but to Aboriginal land rights is enormous, and we're really grateful. I'm really grateful to have had the opportunity to work with them. Peter is another brother in that family, and he is not a weedy city kid. So he turned up, and he's like, "What are you trying to do?" We're like, "Oh, we're going to bang these star pickets in. They're so heavy, it's really hot." Sledgehammer. Thunk. One note for each one. We're like, "All right, well, I'll put out the media release, could you?" So we had an amazing, what I'm saying is there was an alliance of all kinds of skills, and we were really fortunate in that way. So then the buses started to arrive, and there were, for a while there, and plenty of you, should we just do a little show of hands, whoever came out to the blockade? Biggest one. Yeah. So most of you probably travelled from Darwin, but there were a lot of people who came from south in buses that in the peak of it were arriving on a weekly basis, and people came up on a bus and basically were committing to being stranded in a dusty camp in the middle of Kakadu in the dry season, and hoping that if they wanted to get into town, someone could give them a lift, or if they wanted to get down to the leaf fields, you could walk it, but it was pretty far, and if you weren't walking it before the sun came up, it was hot. So amazing that people committed to that. But lots of them did it, and that's how we ended up with over 5,000 people coming to be part of what obviously is the largest blockade in the Territory's history. And we saw so many creative, and Carol, I don't know if you still got trauma from this, but Carol, who I worked with at Gundjeihmi, was the very fortunate person to whom every proposed action was described so that she could have talk with people about whether or not that was appropriate. And there were some pretty wacky ideas. And there were also heaps of fantastic ideas, and most of the proposals, Carol worked with people to work out a way that they could happen, and I'm sure that took a lot of patience, and I'm sure you've got some pretty good stories. And we only had one example of blockaders who decided that they knew better than Mirarr and that they would undertake an action that had been refused, which of course is absolutely outrageous, but also, given the scale, it's pretty amazing. Like that level of respect and acknowledgement that actually it's up to Mirarr what happens on their country and the way that that protest happens. The vast majority of people who came from all kinds of protest history were happy to work in that way and collaborate with Mirarr and respect that actually it's up to Mirarr, because that people were invited to stand with you. That's the whole scenario. I got my time. I could do some stories, but maybe we should do that afterwards. I guess the other things, really, I'm just trying to give a little bit of a sense of the, I guess, the spectrum of the experience of the blockade. And so, in addition to the arrests, which a lot of people would have seen footage of, and we will see beautiful footage of an amazing mass arrest in Pip Starr's fantastic film. Circumstances where over 100 people banded together and pushed through the police line together, so that maybe the first few people are picked off and arrested, but most people just keep pushing through, and it's that really strong non-violence, standing together in solidarity and creating a mass that can't be stopped. So there was several moments like that where the Jabiluka lock up was full to the brim, and people were singing Kookaburra Sits in the Old Gum Tree in rounds, and I have been informed that the police had the protest songs in their heads overnight, because we just sang them too many times. In fact, we've had them in our heads this week. But in addition to those mass arrests, there were people who came and they worked, in a small group in their hometown, and whichever communities would send a few delegates to represent their family or their school or whatever it was, to come up and do the action that they'd agreed on. And so in some cases that was something hilarious, like doing the hokey pokey under the lease gate, or the four Quaker grannies who came up from Newcastle and took their candles on and just at dawn stepped onto the site and were quietly arrested, just to make the point that this wasn't something that was okay. And of course, the most significant arrest of the campaign was senior traditional owner Yvonne Martha being arrested on her own country for trespass. And through the helpful intervention of the judges, ERA's lawyers were able to work out a way to put that case to a point where actually there was a way of saying that Yvonne was trespassing, because even though she was on her country, she was sitting on something that technically belonged to ERA, so she wasn't actually on her country, she was trespassing on ERA property. So absurd, and obviously something that the company didn't want that word getting out that they'd been complicit in such a decision. So Yvonne's arrest was obviously well publicised, but her fine was paid, so there wasn't an opportunity for the point to be made that someone could be sent to jail for trespassing on their own country. However, staff members, Kirstens, and Jackie Katona, both did spend 2 weeks in Verona jail as a result of that arrest when they were there supporting traditional owners. So all kinds of legal ground is broken as a consequence of the campaign. I'm going to wrap it up because I've just been not strong. But I'm really happy, I'm so happy to be here, and I'm so looking forward to chatting with every single person here tonight. But I just also wanted to, I guess, reference the fact that the community in Darwin was such an extraordinary and solid support for blockaders. And I was freshly a member of the Darwin community, one of my housemates sitting up there, David Pollock, and I think quite a few different people spent time in my bedroom over the time that I was living at the blockade. You probably met more of them than I did. But the fact that there was such a strong, like we had a list written down of phone numbers that we could call up. There's no texting, no emailing, to say, oh, we've got a carload of people coming into town, someone's got a sick baby, has anyone got a room? We need 6 bags of cement sent out on Friday, who can get us a bag of kidney beans, whatever. There was always people we could call, and that level of just certainty and assuredness, particularly, Darwin's a mining town, and you all know that, but even more so at that time, and to be willing, a lot of people did things anonymously. There was a lot of really generous anonymous support, and I think over the course of the blockade it became clearer to me, having come from, left-wing heaven of Melbourne, that not every town is like that. And to stand up in a place where you can't be certain that you've got a lot of support takes a lot more guts. And I'm just incredibly grateful to the community of Darwin for the amount of support that you gave to the blockade, and of course that translates to support from Mirror. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Kirsten. I forgot about timekeeping, but I'm also on notice that I'm not going to keep anyone off. I'm just going to let you go. Now I'm going to invite Justin and Corbin to speak for a few minutes. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Corbin. I am one of the Mirror tradition owner. I am the grandson of Jabiluka, who is the older brother of Toby. Tonight, I just really like to thank you all, really, for everything you guys done. Without you guys, without having the gut to do all of this and to go up, out in the middle of the bush and to say no to, bigger companies and really powerful people and, all of this, I wouldn't have the opportunity, to be here talking with you guys. I wouldn't have the opportunity of graduating year 12 or, having interest in other things such as history or, film photography and all that stuff. And yeah, but yeah, no, really, thank you. That's all.
Thanks, Corbin. I wanted to acknowledge the Larrakia people for hosting us here tonight. And thanks to Tibby for the welcome to country and your persistence in fighting for your country and your culture. Your determination is legendary. I want to thank all the campaign colleagues who are here tonight, to GAC staff and our long-term friends and advisors like Kirsten and our brilliant lawyer at large, Susan, wherever she is, he's here somewhere. And our newer friends and colleagues like Hugh. And departed staff are here as well, it's Margot. And others who aren't with us tonight, with whom we've reached out and spoken about this event. Jackie Katona was the CEO who worked very closely with Yvonne and the Mirror, of course, to make the protest happen and guided the corporation through its most toughest time, I would say. She won the Golden Prize jointly with Yvonne, of course, in 1999 in recognition of their work on the campaign to protect Mirror country. Most of all, I want to thank the Mirror for allowing me to do this very privileged work for them, to be fighting with them, to be creative and real with them. And I want to thank, after Alanis Morris said, thank Providence for bringing me to them and them to me. It's been a life-defining thing. I was meant to be here for a year, 23 years ago. I'm not a so-called Jabilukan, but I'm here because of that protest. I was working in Canberra in politics and watched the Mirror and you guys light up this resistance. As I look up, I see other faces. It's fantastic. You know, that was for us down south in the darkest days of the Howard government. And we heard of this great injustice that was being sheeted out to Mirror people up here. And that protest just was a lightning rod to so many. I was politicised, but it really politicised me in a new way. You know, this was a real David and Goliath struggle, and it seemed impossible many times. But for this dogged resistance of the Mirror people and the power of them defending their country and their culture, it's a real strength. It's not to be messed with. I love that poster of Yvonne, it's my country and I'm going to win. Well, that mine has not happened. You talked about it just now, what a different world we would have had that mine happened. I'm so often impressed by how strong and understated Mirror power really is and how that's developed over the years. And I want to say to Yvonne Margarola, who'll see a copy of this, and her sisters and her clan around her, that they have given all the staff who, under great duress and great challenges, sometimes felt like giving up, or sometimes quit, or sometimes wanted to walk away from the fight. Their strength and their resistance gave all of us heart. It's upon that we work. And that sovereignty that inheres in the Mirror, you know, I've worked in politics a lot, and we've reported on politics. It's so much deeper and more profound and longer term than the temporal power you see in prime ministers and ministers, hundreds of whom we have seen come and go out there. And yet there's this 65,000 year well of sovereignty, this power that sits in the Mirror that sustains all of us in a way. We have a sustainability vision a long time ago with one of the campaign colleagues, the ACF. We entered into the Kakadu Charter, November 2000. I think Dave Sweeney, he can remember the date. I wonder if it was the 3rd of November, an auspicious date. About the ending of mining in Kakadu and the development of a sustainable tourism and regional service industry. Well, that's what is tantalisingly close now. That's a Kakadu, or Mirror country free of mining. Kakadu free of mining. So again, wrapping up, I want to thank you all. It wouldn't be me probably to not say that the risk of looking like a killjoy. There are more chapters to be written in this story. The Jabiluka deposit remains on the balance sheet of Energy Resources of Australia. It's 86.3% owned by Rio Tinto. And they're having an AGM, ERA, on the 27th of April. Perhaps a strong presence at that AGM to remind them what they're dealing with would be great. There are more details to come about that. So thank you all. Thanks.
Thank you, Corbin and Justin. Now I'm going to invite Kirsten back now.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
To speak about the exhibition.
Yes. I think actually Dave's I'll just talk about this.
Been told it should.
Okay, great. No problem. Yes, that would be great. Okay. So you've been looking at this beautiful image. This is a very exciting project that Gundjeihmi and the ACF are working on together. And I am still learning to say this word. There are a lot of people in this room who can say this word. So I'll do my best. So the word is karakarme. Oh, here we go. and it means for safekeeping, a place for safekeeping. And so what we are doing is creating an online archive to tell the story and to save the stories of the work to save Kakadu from mining. So we're creating an online exhibition, which is, so Jessie Boylan is sitting here in the middle, second row, an extraordinary person who is creating all of this, and I think it would be fair to say has poured more than heart and soul into this over the last months. So we're very fortunate, and there's an opportunity for everyone to please contribute things like pictures of you in the t-shirts you're wearing tonight, or photos from tonight of people that you're reunited with, or any memories you have from blockade time, or any letters to the paper that you clipped out, or anything that any kind of memory of anything to do with the campaign, or things that you know about the fights and the work that has resulted in the end of uranium mining in Kakadu region. We'll be storing and saving in this very exciting archive, and adjacent to that, there is the online exhibition. So I'm just going to, for the live streamers, this is probably a bit tricky because you can't see the screen, but the link for this is in your emails, and you can spend some time exploring. Everyone can spend some time exploring that at your leisure. But I just want to very briefly give people a little introduction to it. So the first, when you first arrive at the exhibition, you're welcomed by beautiful Shanice. Oh, she's walking out. Do we have audio for this? That works? Yeah. Beautiful. I'll just play this because it's so wonderful.
Hello, my name is Shanice Mujandi. I'm the traditional owner here in Kakadu, and I'd like to welcome you to the story of the ending of all uranium mining here. This means a lot to my family because they fought really hard to stop it for our future, and now I have a little one and she has a better future as well here in Jabiluka, and I hope you enjoy whatever we have inside.
Yes. So beautiful. Thank you. I'm obviously not going to walk you through the whole exhibition, but I would just really encourage you to explore it. And this is speaking from my experience. I have gamers, children who are gamers in my household, and they can just walk through this in 1 second. My hands haven't learnt those skills, but actually just navigating it over the last couple of days, it's gotten easier. So if you click into it and you're just like, what, I'm going on the floor, I can't see anything, just persist, is my advice, because it's totally worth it. So this is an actual, there are some tips on how to do it. This is an actual gallery in Fitzroy that's been mapped, and Jessie has hung an extraordinary collection of archival material and audio, real life Kakadu birds. So you can stroll through and see, she's beautiful. Sorry, live streamers, bear with us, I won't do this for too long. For example,
we got a sacred place up there. That's where we would like it.
I'll be talking about Jidbi.
My father used to tell me, they sacred place up there. We had this stank thing, King Man. He could do the painting up there. Very old, 1,000 years ago. They never won out. That's why we don't let anybody go in up there. Like, come up and then a big window, what they call it. It's story that you might go or you might kill, all over the world.
So that's just an example, but that's actually an amazing piece of footage, which we've just written some text about, and that's a really prescient statement that Toby made about the risk of digging up at Ranger. So the Jidbi site, which a lot of you would be aware of, is above where the Ranger mine is, and there was always concern that disturbing that sacred place would unleash the sacred power. And, as you know, it is the uranium from Ranger that ended up at Fukushima and has caused that big problem. So that's a sidetrack. I know I'm meant to be telling you about the exhibition, but I can't ever not tell you that story. But so you can there's just a bit of a sense of what it's like. So there's heaps of posters, there's photos, there's a big copy of that beautiful image of the banner on the rock, all kinds of things. So I really strongly encourage you to spend some time having a look at that, and please dig out in the boxes that you have this beautiful banner here within one of the Gundjeihmi shipping containers, so we know what things that have been stored in Darwin smell like. It's fine. Get in contact. There's details in the email that you would have received. So that's really, it's something which we are continuing to develop, but there's heaps there at the moment, so I'd really encourage you to just have a look at that when you get home. Thank you for your patience, live streamers. We will talk more about that shortly.
Amazing. And now I'm going to invite Dave Sweeney to come and talk and give an introduction to the film.
Thank you, Kirsty. I do need an introduction. My name's Dave Sweeney. I work with the Australian Conservation Foundation, but I've got a long history. I haven't been here for a long time. It's great to be on Larrakia country, and thanks to you for welcome. Just back from Mirror country after a long time because of COVID hiatus and other issues. Half a dozen years since I've been there probably. But this place has had a very long time, and it's a long thread in my story, personally and professionally. It's been a long time between drinks, but this is a very special place, special in the heart. And for a story with heart, you go no further than the story of Jabiluka. It's an incredible story. Against the odds, and despite a very stacked system, a small group of gutsy Aboriginal people with a large group of determined supporters changed not the whole world, but a very special part of it, and changed it for the better and forever. And without Yvonne Margarula's leadership and our collective efforts, this would not have happened. As Justin said, as Corbin reflected, there would be a mine out there, there would be mining a material that causes poison for hundreds of thousands of years, and it would be going through to at least 2065, and now it's not, and it will not. So whether you're in the room or the Zoom, whether you come from the top end or via the laptop, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So let's jump into TARDIS. Let's go back. March 1996, a federal election which saw the newly elected coalition government accept the challenge of change. So uranium policy, which had been largely in an uneasy holding pattern under Labor, neither growing nor shrinking, suddenly moved to higher on the political agenda. There were two key targets of the new national government. One was to curb the power of trade unions, and the second was to remove the constraints, as they saw it, the black, green and red tape that was stopping Australia, home of 40% of the world's uranium, from being the Saudi Arabia of the nuclear industry. And they decided to start this assault on the Citadel, on Kakadu. They chose Jabiluka. And they chose Jabiluka for a reason, because they knew if they could carry the day there, they would be unstoppable anywhere. They knew that. We knew that. Everybody knew the stakes. The CLP, the Federal Coalition, North Limited, ERA, the Minerals Lobby, the mining media chorus were all gathered on one side. On the other side were environment, peace, conservation and nuclear-free voices. And the Mirror, who more than anybody, having been undermined and overruled in their opposition to Ranger, who more than anybody knew the real costs, the human costs, the environmental and cultural costs of this industry. So the stage was set, as has been said, for a David and Goliath struggle. It was actually a fundamental and deep clash of values. On one hand, you had a transactional view of the world. It saw that extraction and short-term private profit was the priority. On the other hand, You had a perspective that was based on long-term care, on responsibility and respect for both people and place. Later tonight we'll see Pip Starr's beautiful film about the blockade, Fight for Country. That captures the time, it captures the tone very sweetly. So I won't talk a lot about specifics, and I won't name all those who fully deserve to be named, because that wouldn't be a quick talk, it would be an extract from the electoral roll. There's so many who did so much. You know who they are, you were one yourself, your partner was, your brother and sister was, you know the story. So important. So some observations from the Jabiluka campaign, the blockade and the campaign and what it means, and some observations from a national perspective. Because this wasn't a postcode fight in Jabiru or Darwin or the Territory, it was a national fight. And that's what it became. So one observation is that there is power, real power in truth, in clarity and in authenticity. If you did any sort of resource allocation analysis, a hard power assessment of the respective forces at Jabiluka, the two different Jabiluka worldviews, you probably would not have put your money on our side. The other side had money, connections, political power, media influence. It had, importantly, the power and the machinery of the state, the cops and the courts. We didn't have those things, but we had a message and values and a vision that resonated with many here and around the world. And we had the authority that comes from the world's oldest continuing culture. The authenticity and solid law, LORE, of Yvonne Margarula, the strategic smarts and energy of Jackie Katona, the energy of Christine Christopherson. Deborah Katona is here tonight. Carol Christopherson's here tonight. The richness in this room is fantastic. You braid that together with environmental organisations, trade unions, critical thinkers, thoughtful voices, and you have a platform for change. Together we create synergies and opportunities that transcend what we can do as individuals or as individual organisations. Ecosystems are stronger when they are diverse, and so are social movements. Another observation is that small groups of people can achieve very big changes. You probably know the Margaret Mead quote, indeed it's the only thing that does. But small groups of people can achieve great things. ECNT, I would like to give a shout out to, because ECNT hosted House Stepped Up, and ECNT was pivotal in putting Jabiluka on the radar of the national environment organisations, Friends of the Earth, the Australian Conservation Foundation, the Wilderness Society. And I give a special recognition to the efforts and the advocacy of Jane Weepers, the convener of ECNT at that time. Jane used her networks and her respect to make sure we listened, took it seriously, elevated it and acted. It was also people of great creativity that came to this. This image, Melbourne artist Kathleen McCann designed it in Jabiru before the blockade. It has subsequently not just been on t-shirts around the joint and on stencils, it's gone around the world. It's gone from a design for a specific fight to around the world a clarion call for a nuclear-free future. Those things are powerful and those resonances continue. One of the other things that's really powerful and a real observation for me and for many others from the Jabiluka campaign was the importance of finding common ground between First Nations people and us later arrivals. Whether we're old invaders, medium colonialists, or whether we're just off a plane or a boat seeking refuge and a fresh start. Between the oldest continuing culture in the world, and those of us who have come later, finding common ground is important. As Uncle Bruce Pascoe put it, he said, Black Australia is not dying out and White Australia is not going away. Now that might be a cause of sadness for parts of both communities, but it's the reality. There's no smoothing the dying pillow and there's no getting on the big tall ship and going away. We are here in this beautiful country muddling along. But we shouldn't keep muddling, we should start thinking. We need to find ways to work effectively and respectfully together to address past wrongs, to address current deficiencies and to shape a better future. And Mirar's generosity and Mirar's tenacity has shone a bright light on a way forward. In Kakadu we are moving from a rip and ship mining province to a dynamic, respected, protected future. And this is an important model for our country at this time. And it's an important story of hope. Jabiluka is an important story of hope. Amid technological, political, economic forces that often foster unconstrained individualism at the cost of collective responsibility and value, hope, humour and humanity are revolutionary tools. And in the shadow of AUKUS, nuclear subs, pressure for increased nuclearisation, pressure for increased militarisation, we need our hope, we need our humour, and we need our humanity. It's been said that if you fight, you might not always win. Now that's true. But if you don't fight, and by that I mean peacefully, I mean tenaciously, I mean creatively, if you don't fight for what really matters, you will never win. Jabiluka was a win. It was a win for Kakadu, it was a win for the territory, it was a win for our nation, and it was a win for the world. It reduced radioactive risk, and it grew rights, recognition, and respect. That's a pretty good win. And little people, big people, connected people, quiet people, doing big things, doing little things, collectively braided the rope that Gulliver-like held down the nuclear industry in Kakadu and has turned it from a uranium province to a living, dynamic place. And that is worth celebrating. Thank you.
I think we might be ending the live stream now, and we're going to watch a film which actually I am going to ask Dave or Kirsten to introduce properly, if that's okay, after that incredible speech that I'm feeling a bit emotional after, I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. It's a good night for emotion and a good cause for emotion. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with no dry eye. This is a great film. It was made by a really creative and committed progressive filmmaker called Pipstar with the support of Bill Rumpton from Rockhopper Productions, and it's called Fight for Country. Unfortunately, Pip's passed since. He can't be with us, but his hope and his energy and his artwork and creativity are. Pip spent a chunk of time with Mirar, and he passed the most fundamental test, which was that trust test. People trusted him. He had a gentle approach, a thoughtful manner, and he just he was there. He wasn't a pushy TV news camera. He was a low down here. First we talk, then if you're happy, off.